Hey, everybody, welcome back to another exciting edition of the Security Repo Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Dwayne. And once again, I'm thanking you for all those likes and subscribes. It's really helped us grow, reach a wider audience, and spread the good messages of security out there to the wider world. This week, we have an awesome guest that I met back at BSides San Antonio, where I was also a speaker. But Matt Gracie is joining us this week. He's a defensive security specialist with 15 years of blue team experience in higher education, manufacturing, financial services, and healthcare. He's currently a senior engineer on the professional services team over at Security Onion Solutions, as well as an adjunct professor of cybersecurity in the graduate school at Canisius University. You can also probably know him as the lead organizer of Info 716, a monthly meetup for security enthusiasts in Western New York, and he is the BSides Buffalo Technology Conference organizer. He enjoys a good beer, mountain bike, open source security tools, and that's what we're here to talk about. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks so much for having me. Good to be here.
Actually, I just want to dive right in directly to the topic at hand with what you talked about back at that BSides, which was Security Onion. Now, you work for a company called Security Onion Solutions, but Security Onion itself is an open source tool, right?
Correct. So Security Onion is a free and open enterprise security monitoring platform. The project was started in 2008 by Doug Burks. And then a few years later, he founded Security Onion Solutions, which is the company that I work for. So the distinction there is Security Onion is the platform itself. And then Security Onion Solutions, we provide services around the platform. So if somebody wants to have a paid support contract, or they want to send their analysts for training, or they want to buy appliances that are preloaded with the software, that's all the stuff that we do at Security Onion Solutions.
Right on. So the tool itself is free, but you actually need to manage that stuff and have it run somewhere, and you're providing all that good services.
Right. So we provide support for people who, they may want to have a number that they can call for break fix, or they may have questions about what's the best architecture for this deployment. We've got a big multinational network. Where do we put all the pieces? How do they all work together? So we help our customers with that stuff.
Thank you for doing it. But that's focus in on the open source tool itself, the free open source tool. Anybody listening to this can get their hands on right now and deploy and test and run as they please. So what is Security Onion?
Okay, so like I said, Security Onion's a free and open platform for enterprise security monitoring. So it has a bunch of different capabilities and use cases built into it, but the two that people tend to think about the most are network security monitoring, meaning monitoring your live network traffic via a TAP or a span port, or log management, meaning you send in logs from other devices or from endpoints on your network or from cloud services. On the network monitoring side, all of the network traffic that it sees, it records. It has full packet capture. It generates metadata by default using Zeek, so you get log information about all these network flows. It evaluates everything using Suricata and IDS signatures. And then it can also evaluate files that it pulls out of traffic using a tool called Strelka, written by our friends at Target. And for that, you can write your own Yara rules and do file analysis that way. All of that information, all of those logs goes into an Elasticsearch database on the back end, and then you can use it for hunting or alerting or investigation, whatever you want. On the log collection front, it comes with parsers for a whole bunch of third-party platforms and tools. So if you're using things like Palo Alto or Cisco or Fortinet devices, we can ingest all of those different logs. We have pipelines built up to ingest all of it, put it all into a common database schema, and then put that into the same backend. So you can pivot between all of these different logs, all of these different pieces of network metadata, and get sort of a holistic view of what's happening on your network. There's a couple other things built in. We have an intrusion detection honeypot capability that's very popular. We have some case management tools for enterprise users who want to have a way for their analysts to track their notes and their investigations. But for any level of user, the network monitoring and the log management pieces are probably the most commonly used.
So I'm just curious, the output on this thing, how much storage would someone need to run something like this? Because if you're generating logs on every event, like I imagine for a large application, this gets hefty pretty quick, right?
It can. So the nice thing is you can scale it horizontally depending on the size of your deployment. So, for example, I have Security Onion running on my home network here, and it's just a couple of VMs running on a Proxmox server. I think I've dedicated about half a terabyte of storage to it altogether, and that's more than sufficient for a small home lab. But we have customers who have multinational distribution grids with hundreds of nodes in them, and terabytes upon terabytes of storage to keep all this stuff together. So really, it kind of depends on your use case how many resources you're going to need. If you just want to try it out, we have a very simple deployment we call an import node. You can run it on a single VM, even in something like VirtualBox. And what that will do is it'll stand up the Security Onion tooling, and then you can just feed packet captures into it. So if you pull something from the malware traffic analysis website, for example, you can feed it into one of these import nodes. It'll put it through all the tools, so you'll see what it would look like, what Suricata alerts would be triggered, what Zeek metadata would be generated, and get a feel for the tool without having to dedicate a whole lot of resources to it.
Is there a particular industry or vertical that is adopting this more so than others?
We have a pretty good distribution. We have customers in manufacturing. We have customers in healthcare. We have a lot of customers in education, as you might expect. It makes a very good teaching platform. Personally, I teach a blue teaming course every fall. It'll be coming up in a couple weeks. And I use Security Onion as my teaching platform because I can give my students hands-on experience with here's how you write Suricata rules. Here's how you conduct an investigation. Here's how you figure out what that malware actually did. For the price of some hand-me-down hardware in the cybersecurity lab, I can give them experience that'll be helpful to them in the workplace. We also have a pretty big footprint in government and like I said, education.
So it's open source, which means it's free, but as we used to say back in my Drupal days, free is in puppies. Like, there it is, but now you got to take care of the thing. What advice would you give for companies that are thinking about going down the open source, especially security tooling route? Is there anything they think they need to think about up front?
Well, depending on what the tooling is, it may require more, I guess it's a contextual knowledge than some commercial offerings, right? So just to use Security Onion as an example, because that's what I'm the most familiar with. If someone's going to deploy Security Onion, it is built on top of Linux. You might want to have a little bit of Linux experience in-house. We try to make the care and feeding as simple as possible, but there's still times when you need to understand things like how do I adjust the settings on a network interface, right? It's built on top of Elasticsearch. If you've got a small deployment, that's not going to be a big deal. But if you have a large deployment, you've got multiple nodes in that Elasticsearch cluster, and you need to understand things like data lifecycle management, that's going to be a little bit steeper of a learning curve if you've never run into it before. Obviously, I am biased. I think we have excellent documentation. But if you're journeying into this sort of platform for the first time, it might be good to read through the support forums and read through the documentation and make sure you know what you're getting yourself in for.
So you do a lot of support for this as well on the actually company side of it. Have you seen people like come from past solutions or SaaS solutions trying to adopt this to save a few bucks and then say, whoa, I didn't understand I was going to have to do this much work?
I don't think so, but I can't really speak for customers who don't talk to us as support engineers, right? I'm sure there are people out there who download it and try to deploy it and get frustrated and give up. Unfortunately, if they give up before they reach out and talk to support or before they post on any of our community resources, we never hear from them. So I don't know that I could really answer that.
All right, man. Fair enough. But I'm always curious, like how you would advise someone on making that decision. Like, obviously, here's what you need to know: the level of Linux knowledge you would need to know to get into this, the level like Elasticsearch and specific technical knowledge. But from a business perspective, if I'm trying to evaluate this, say I'm a small team. We're very concerned about security around here, but this is one path I could go down. How would you approach that and say, look at various vendors, various other solutions, maybe the individual pieces? Like, how would you approach just an evaluation of Security Onion?
So your question is if you're looking to replace a current commercial offering, or if you're just greenfield starting everything up new.
I wish we lived in the magical world where greenfield was a real thing. Let's talk about the real practical, that you came into a mess and you got to get something better than you got. And this is one of the options on the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, my suggestion would be go to our YouTube channel. We've got an overview video that I recorded earlier this year that walks through the whole platform, shows you all the capabilities, how all the pieces fit together. Take a look. If it seems like a good fit, again, you can download and deploy a test instance without ever talking to us. If you just want to play around with it, you can pull it off our GitHub. We don't even ask for your email address. All you need to do is download the ISO, spin it up in a VM, and see if it's a good fit. If you have questions during that process, we have a discussion forum on GitHub where myself and the other support engineers hang out and answer questions. So, give it a shot. Like you said, it's free as in puppies, meaning you're going to have to invest some time, but you're not going to have to go through any kind of procurement process to do that. So depending on your organization, that might put you ahead anyway.
Well, since I got you and we got a little bit of time, I did want to turn to the education side of your life. So what's going on with teaching kids security these days? Are they coming in saying, I want to be a hacker? Or are they coming in saying, hey, I want to defend industrial and operational systems? Or where are you meeting these people?
First of all, every student wants to be a red teamer. They just do. It looks like the most fun, so that's what they want to do. Just like when I was an undergrad in computer science, and every single classmate of mine wanted to go work for a game company. That's just how it is. I teach graduate students for cybersecurity, and that's a really interesting experience. In the past, I've taught undergrads, and when I was teaching freshman computer science, there was a certain uniformity to it, right? All of the students were 17, 18 years old for the most part, fresh out of high school. They were all real mad because my class was at 8:30 in the morning on a Monday. And there was a certain kind of, experience that I could count on. They all had similar backgrounds. Now that I'm teaching graduate students, I have no idea what to expect. I have students who come in and they're like, look, I'm working in IT. I did my undergrad work in computer science. I'm thinking of pivoting into a security role, and I think this credential might help. And I had a student a couple of years ago on the first day tell me, look, I just finished my undergrad degree in accounting. Turns out accounting sucks. Hacking sounds cool. Can you teach me how to do this? So, the level of technical background and sort of contextual skills they already have varies a lot. As an instructor, that makes it interesting because I have to figure out a way to teach the class where I'm not going to bore the people who have a deeper background, but I'm not going to overwhelm the students who are new to all these concepts. So that's always an interesting tightrope to walk.
All right, on. Is there anything been really surprising about seeing this generational change? Let's be honest, we're both people with a little bit of gray in our beards. When I went to school, like we were like on Windows 3.0, and like the idea of like point and click was still something fairly newish. But now kids are like born digital. It feels like. Have you seen that reflected? I guess with graduate students a little bit older, but have you seen like any advantages or disadvantages to like being so digital native coming in?
It's kind of a double-edged sword because they have more experience with technology, but the technology is a lot more reliable. Like I know you remember, same as I do, back in the late 90s, if you had a computer, it was like having a car in 1950. You knew how to gap the spark plugs because they get fouled every 5,000 miles, and you had to know how to do that, right? If you were running Windows 95, you had to know how to rebuild a lot of stuff. Computers have gotten very reliable, and smartphones and tablets even more so. So a lot of times when you take students who've only worked with these modern systems and you're trying to teach them like, no, this is how, a TCP connection actually works. This is what's happening under the covers. This is how you go out to PowerShell and do something. That stuff is all brand new to them. So there's a lot less of that tinkering instinct than there used to be, just because they haven't had to. They haven't been exposed to it.
Everything's hidden behind a GUI. We reduced the free open web to a series of really terrible little tiny browsers that only go to very specific little tiny websites. Is how somebody explained it to me. I think Cory Doctorow said that.
And I don't know if you saw, but there was a tweet going around a couple of weeks ago that was like, no other generation will know how to rotate a PDF. That skill dies with us.
Rotate a PDF. Oh man. The turning point for me was, I think I read Neil Stephenson's In the Beginning Was the Command Line. And I realized that all we were ever doing is writing these little notes back and forth to the computer. And it didn't matter if we were clicking a button to do that or if we were typing to do that. But once you could just remove the veneer of like what a developer thought you should be doing with it, and you could just directly type the request, it opened up the world to me. All right, man. Thank you for being here. We like to ask all of our guests a few questions, the same 4 questions, to get their perspective on the world and get to know you a little bit better. So we'll just dive right in. The first one is, what is your favorite security command line tool?
I got to admit, my favorite command line tools are the old school text processing tools. I get more use out of cat and con and sort and awk and sed than I possibly should. My first Unix experience was with Solaris back in the day, which didn't have any of these like modern text processing scripting languages installed on them. So that's what I picked up back then, and that's what I still use all the time.
Awk is so powerful, and
it is.
It's becoming a forgotten lore, but if you know it, wow, what you can do with it. I like sed myself, but a little bit easier to use. You've had a number of jobs in your life, obviously. You have 2 right now. What's your favorite question you've ever been asked in an interview?
My favorite question I've been asked in an interview. The last gig I had before this one, I was working for an insurance company, and they asked me, there was sort of a technical interview and there were a lot of very difficult questions. And then the last question they asked me was Star Trek or Star Wars? I'm really not that kind of nerd, guys. I'm more of a Blade Runner kind of guy, but I do appreciate the thought.
Well, the obvious answer is obvious, and we'll leave that to the audience to know what I mean. Not going to get into that one either. All right. It's time to play best advice, worst advice. So what is the absolute best security advice you could give us right here and now?
Okay. So my best advice for a layperson is, even if you don't get a password manager, use different passwords for your stuff and turn on MFA wherever you can. There's a reason why credential stuffing is such a useful, popular attack, because it works. Guys like my dad use the same password on every account, and then someday Domino's gets popped, and that's also the password on all his other accounts. So please, for the love of God, even if you need to have a little notebook next to your keyboard and write down your passwords, that is fine. I assure you, the risk of having the same password everywhere is much higher than the risk of somebody breaking into your house and stealing your little notebook.
Thank you for saying that, by the way, because that's a hot take right now in the community. I've said that to people, and they're like, you should never write down a password under no circumstance. Like, yeah, but logistically they would have to break in and like steal your grandmother's diamonds. And that's the same level of security that we're talking about for that notebook. So I agree with you.
The best line of thought I heard, and I wish I could remember who had said it because I've been quoting it for years, is if you have a piece of paper with passwords written on it, treat it like you would a $100 bill. We have established procedures for protecting valuable pieces of paper. Just use them, right?
Yep.
For security professionals, I would say the best advice I can give is look at the fundamentals. Look at the top 20, or I know they consolidated top 18 or whatever they are, controls, and make sure that that's the stuff that you're doing. way too many people are like, well, obviously we need to be threat hunting for 0 days from nation state actors in our network, when in reality they don't have any kind of asset inventory. HR is opening PDFs all day long with a copy of Adobe Reader that's 7 years old, and all of the ports in the visitor areas of their building are open. Like, no, you need to worry about the fundamentals first. Treat the top 20 like a checklist, get through all that, and then worry about the very low probability risks in your environment.
All right, this is the fun one. What's the absolute worst piece of security advice you have ever heard given in your life?
The worst piece. Well, it's probably the same piece that every security analyst has heard at some point or another, which is, you don't need to investigate that alert. The antivirus said it was quarantined.
Yeah, the antivirus solved everything, right?
Yeah. I've got a Cisco Pix and a copy of Symantec, man. Security accomplished. I'm done.
See, that's where compliance is not security. I think that's where that really works as a statement. I saw Jeff Mann give a talk recently. Like, if you're actually nailing down what's underneath, like, all of the compliance stuff, you're actually doing security right. Like, you're literally knocking down those basics, locking them down. But if you're just like, I checked a box because we put a tool in place, you ain't doing either. That's not compliant, and that's not secure. So I like that answer. All right, we're at the end of the show, man, and we always love to give our guests final say. If there's anything you want to talk about in the larger security community, any specific points you want to make, anything you want to plug out there, now's your time.
Only thing I want to mention, as Dwayne said, I'm the founder and organizer of the BSides conference here in Buffalo, New York. If you have a BSides conference in your city, get out, visit, meet some people. They are fantastic events. If you don't have one and you want to start one, hit me up. I'm happy to help however I can. I'll tell you all about my founding journey. But, security is a team sport. We are all in this together, and you need to network with your local folks so that you've got somebody to bounce ideas off of and ask for help when you need it.
That's a great way to leave the show, man. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for fighting the good fight out there in open source and for educating that next generation that's hopefully going to keep us secure in the future. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Take care, Dwayne.